371 Causing trouble. The reason Madam Sun agreed was firstly because of Wu Jin's identity as the village chief, and secondly, because no matter how much trouble she caused at the entrance of the factory, only dozens of food factory workers would know about it, so the impact would be limited, but the village committee was different. It would help her blow things up. Yu Yin, who was far away, could only vaguely hear their words. Now that she saw Madam Sun ask the people blocking the door to move aside so the workers could enter to work, she cursed Madam Sun for being useless and wished she could rush forward herself. However, she could only follow behind the crowd silently and continue to observe the subsequent developments. When they arrived at the village committee, Madam Sun refused to enter the office. "I'm not going in. This is your territory. Who knows what you guys want to do? If you want to talk, do it here." At this time, all the villagers had gone to the fields, but from afar, they could still see a large group of people at the entrance of the village committee. Some people had already noticed this situation, but because the team leader was in charge, they couldn't go over to watch. They could only discuss with others in low voices. After Yu Yin followed Madam Sun all the way to the village committee, she could tell what Madam Sun was up to. After thinking about it, she decided to help Madam Sun, so she jogged to the field. Yu Yin ran to the middle of the road and shouted, "Someone from the neighboring village is causing trouble here." When everyone heard that someone was causing trouble, they, who were already a little distracted, became even more curious. Now that they had an excuse, they immediately raised their hoes and shovels to help. The group leader, Director Lu, only managed to stop more than half of them. A small number of people had already rushed over the moment they received the news. Seeing this, Director Lu could only jog over. When Madam Sun and the villagers saw dozens of people rushing towards the village committee, their first reaction was that they had encountered trouble. An older man in his 30s or 40s looked at Wu Jin with a dark expression. "Mr. Wu, what do you mean by this?" Wu Jin frowned in puzzlement when he saw the villagers in front of him. However, he only thought that everyone had seen the situation here and rushed over out of worry. Madam Sun was worried that Wu Jin would chase her away, so before Wu Jin could speak, she took the initiative to help him out and said, "We're in the right, so we're not afraid no matter how many of them come." When De Gang heard this, he felt a little uneasy. They were in other people's territory to begin with, so if they really fought, he would definitely suffer. Hence, he made up his mind to admit defeat immediately if they really fought later. There was no need for him to be beaten up for the sake of his relatives. "Village Chief, what happened?" "Village Chief, who's here to cause trouble?" "We're not pushovers." Everyone asked Wu Jin, but their eyes were fixed on Madam Sun and the others. They looked like they would immediately pounce on them as long as Wu Jin gave the order. When Madam Sun saw that there were 50 to 60 people, she secretly rejoiced and her usually sharp voice immediately became choked as she said, "We're not here to cause trouble. We're here to seek justice. My daughter-in-law, Wen Qin, has gone out of control ever since she came to work. Now, she's even asking for a divorce. My poor 6-year-old grandson lost the company of his parents at such a young age. Which village has a divorced family? How can our family hold our heads up in the future? If they find out that my grandson has a divorced mother, what will happen to him when he grows up?" The villagers of Yi Mountain Village didn't expect this to be a family matter. Because of their conservative views, their first reaction was to help the Sun family persuade Wen Qin. Wen Qin could only tell them what the Sun family had done to her and her son again. She thought that it would change everyone's mind, but she didn't expect everyone to condemn her. They felt that it wasn't to the point of needing a divorce, and they even tried to dissuade her. Wen Qin, men are mostly hot-tempered and some beat their wives when they're anxious. There are only a few couples who haven't fought before. That's true. You guys can't fight anymore. Look at the injury on Wen Qin's hand. That's right. Moreover, how can you jeopardize the child's health? Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 372 Separation. Wen Qin showed everyone the old scars from the past. When Sun Guo saw that someone was speaking up for her, he immediately said, No. I haven't touched her for a few months. That was in the past. I won't beat her anymore." As for the problem regarding the child's illness, he used Madam Sun's previous excuse. No one doubted him. After all, no one would really investigate it in detail. They only had an acquaintance with Wen Qin and didn't know her that well. That's more like it. Wen Qin, bring the child home. Your man has promised you already. When Madam Sun saw that the situation was looking good, she immediately said, "Miss Yu, my daughter-in-law is pregnant and has to take care of my grandson, so she won't be working anymore. She'll be resigning today." Wen Qin stood forward and said to Madam Sun sternly, "This is my job, so you have no right to make the decision for me." Yu Bing was furious. These feudal ideas were still restraining everyone, so no wonder it was so difficult to promote equality between men and women. If women themselves didn't come to this realization, who could they expect to save them? I'm sorry, but this is a matter between the employee and the factory. The families of employees can't interfere with the factory's personnel hiring. When Madame Sun saw that Yu Bing was still going against her, a ruthless look appeared in her eyes. Yu Bing, you're unwilling to stop until you break up our family, right? Wu Jin guessed that there was still going to be trouble, so he planned to send everyone away first. After all, it wasn't appropriate for about 100 people to crowd around here. Those who didn't know better would think that there was a gang fight. Moreover, it wasn't easy to control so many people. If a fight broke out, they wouldn't be able to stop it, so he said, everyone, please disperse. This is Wen Qin's family matter, so let them settle it themselves. Now that the situation was finally advantageous to her, how could Madame Sun let her go? Mr. Wu, what do you mean? Everyone is trying to uphold justice, so why are you chasing them away? Wu Jin knew that these old ladies from the countryside were the most difficult to deal with, so he said with an impassive expression, it's work time now. The villagers still have to work in the fields. Village chief, we'll be the judges at the side. You guys can say whatever you want. It won't delay our work. A slightly hoarse female voice sounded from the crowd. It was unknown who spoke, but the people who wanted to watch the commotion quickly echoed, Village chief, this involves our village's food factory, so we're concerned. This little bit of time won't delay our work. We will definitely finish today's work. Madame Sun was very smug when she heard this. She knew that people like to watch drama and that they like to persuade people not to get a divorce. When Madame Sun saw Yu Yin in the crowd, she suddenly thought of something and her eyes lit up as she looked at Wu Jin suspiciously. Mr. Wu, I'm afraid that's not the reason, right? I heard that you recommended Yu Bing as the factory director. Could there be an unclear relationship between the two of you? Wu Jin was an upright person, so he didn't expect to be slandered by Madame Sun at his age. He was so angry that he scolded in a low voice, Madame Sun, you can't spout nonsense. Madame Sun, you're overthinking things. Mr. Wu was in the army in the past, so he's fair and upright. Miss Yu is in this position because of her talent. That's right. There's nothing wrong with their moral characters. Madame Sun, you're overthinking things. The villagers saw everything Yu Bing did for them. Now, everything in the industrial chain was developing in a good direction. Other food factories might not be able to reach their current scale in a year, but Yu Bing did so in less than half a year. Madame Sun didn't expect Wu Jin and Yu Bing to have such a good reputation in the mountain village. However, when she thought of the information Yu Yin had given her, she felt a little more confident and decided to narrow down the scope. I don't know about Mr. Wu, but I've heard a little about your factory director. I heard that she often goes on business trips. Do you know what will happen when a man and woman are together all day long? Moreover, she's with a different man every time. Hearing this, the surrounding villagers couldn't help but be led astray by Madame Sun's sex-related news had always attracted more attention than other rumors. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 373 Evidence. Yu Bing wasn't angry when she heard this again and asked calmly, Madame Sun, this is the second time you've said it. Where's the evidence? Madame Sun replied calmly, I don't have any evidence, but which woman would go out with a man all day long like you? Tell me, would you guys feel at ease having such a woman as your wife? The most important thing for a woman is to serve her husband, her in-laws, and take care of her children. But what about Yu Bing? She has been working with a group of men for longer than she has stayed at home, right? With my daughter-in-law following such a leader, it would be strange if she didn't ask for a divorce. However, my family is kind. For the sake of my grandson, as long as Wen Qin is willing to come back, we'll let bygones be bygones. At this point, Madame Sun changed the topic and forcefully squeezed out a few tears. Yu Bing, please take pity on our family. Please show mercy and don't do evil things like breaking up other people's families again. Madame Sun complained tearfully. Her goal was to force Yu Bing to settle the matter peacefully and fire Wen Qin. As long as Wen Qin lost her source of income, where else could she go in the village all alone? She could only return to the Sun family obediently. At that time, Wen Qin would be at her mercy. Wen Qin had embarrassed their family so much, so she had to teach Wen Qin a lesson. When the villagers heard Madame Sun's question, they discussed it one after another. Everyone acknowledged Yu Bing's capabilities. Some of the women had even thought of marrying Yu Bing to their sons, but after hearing that Yu Bing went on business trips often, they gave up on this idea. The position of factory directors sounded prestigious, but they hoped their future daughter-in-law would be able to manage the household. Therefore, when Madame Sun said this, everyone had different opinions. They also suspected that Yu Bing was really behind Wen Qing's divorce. They had heard that it was normal for city dwellers to get divorced. Yu Bing was knowledgeable and individualistic, so it was hard to guarantee that Wen Qing wasn't influenced by her. Every time someone attacked a woman, it would be about sexual matters. Yu Bing lamented that there was still a long way to go in promoting equality between men and women in the country. Yu Bing stopped Wen Qing, who was about to retort, and whispered a few words into her ear. Then, she walked to Madam Sunday. Madam Sun, you said that I asked Wen Qing to get a divorce? First, your family used the Wen family's letter to threaten Wen Qing into marrying into your family. Then, you and your son used verbal insults, beatings, and other methods to torture Wen Qing, mentally and physically at the same time. You even used imprisonment to restrict her personal freedom. Do you treat Wen Qing as a human being? Is this how you treat your family? Then, Yu Bing told everyone about the humiliation Wen Qing had suffered when she went to the Sun family's house. Yu Bing turned around and looked around at everyone as she said, if your daughter met such an in-law, would you guys refuse to let her get a divorce? If my daughter suffers such grievances, I'll King smash their house. That's right. My daughter doesn't live a luxurious life at home, but I can't bear to lay a finger on her. If anyone dares to abuse my daughter like this after she marries into her in-law's family, I'll definitely bring her brothers to fight them. That's true. They do have to seek justice, but they can't divorce so casually. Just beat them up until they're afraid of bullying their daughter. If my daughter marries into such a family, I'll definitely let her get a divorce. How can pride be more important than my daughter? If my daughter stays there, I'm afraid that she'll be killed by this vicious mother and son one day. One wouldn't even feel the pain until the knife cut one's flesh. First, Yu Bing told them the origin of this dishonorable marriage, then she told them about Wen Qing's undignified life in that family. Then, she let them see Wen Qing's choice to divorce from a different perspective. Madam Sun didn't expect Yu Bing to speak up for Wen Qing despite being slandered, so she was furious and decided to expose everything. Regardless of whether it was useful or not, at least she couldn't let Yu Bing off so easily. Madam Sun shot Yu Bing a sinister look. Yu Bing, you're criticizing others, but what about you? Why didn't you mention your own moral conduct? As the sound of the tractor approached, everyone looked in the direction of the sound and saw Xiaoxing driving. Two men in military green police uniforms got out of the car with ugly expressions. Young man, you were driving so fast that the bumpiness almost shook the breakfast out of my stomach. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 374 Witness. Xiaoxing went forward and said to the two police officers apologetically, I'm sorry, but things were a little urgent. I'll treat the two of you to a meal as an apology later. The older policeman shook his head. It's fine. Let's work on the case first. When Madam Sun saw that there were really police officers, she licked her dry lips nervously, and the veins on her temples throbbed. When Yu Bing saw this, she smiled and went forward to greet them. Hello, police officers. I'm the person in charge of the food factory, Yu Bing. I want to report that someone is spreading rumors about me sleeping around. Madam Sun panicked when she heard this. I was just saying so casually. Isn't everyone in the village like this? Other people also said that about me. Who would call the police because of this? Yu Bing smiled coldly and said, so now, you're admitting that you don't have any evidence and were spreading rumors about me to everyone? Since the police were already here, Madam Sun naturally didn't dare to admit it. Moreover, she immediately thought of the person who told her this news. Someone else told me this. Otherwise, how would I know? I wasn't the one who started the rumors. The young police officer asked, who told you? When Madam Sun looked over, she only saw a crowd. At this moment, she suddenly saw a figure walking out. She immediately raised her hand and pointed as she shouted, it's that woman without a single patch on her shirt. She told me these things. After everyone looked in the direction Madam Sun was pointing at, they saw Yu Yan squeezing her way out of the crowd. Yu Yan? Someone immediately shouted in surprise. Yu Yan cursed Madam Sun for being incompetent and implicating her, but she still turned around and immediately retorted, don't slander me. What did I tell you? Can anyone else testify? When the police arrived, everyone wanted to get rid of their own suspicion, so when Madam Sun heard Yu Yan deny it, she pointed at her family members behind her and said, they are all witnesses. Don't try to deny it. Seeing this, Yu Yan smiled and said, these are all people from your village, so of course they are on your side. Yu Bing didn't expect Yu Yan to be involved in this matter. Now, she immediately understood why Madam Sun kept going against her. It turned out that there was a good-for-nothing military advisor behind the scenes. After Yu Bing thought for a moment, she decided to help Madam Sunday. As far as I know, the confessions of people from the same village can be accepted, right? The old policeman replied, "It can be accepted, but the confession of a relative will be reconsidered. Just being from the same village is fine." Madam Sun trembled when she heard this. "You little b****, you still want to harm me?" She told me those words. She's the one who spread rumors and slandered me. If you want to arrest someone, arrest her. When Yu Yin heard this, she panicked. She was indeed the one who said it, so now she could only think of a way to confirm those things. Otherwise, she would be arrested. I was telling the truth to begin with. She did go on a business trip with different men and went for many days. For so many days, they did whatever they wanted and no one knows what they did. What right do you guys have to say that I started a rumor and lied? It might be true. Yu Bing is just complaining out of guilt. Yu Bing frowned as she said, "I don't know why you hate me so much that you even ran to an outsider to spread rumors." After Yu Bing finished speaking, she turned around and smiled at everyone. Compared to the exasperated Yu Yin, she looked much calmer. "I, Yu Bing, have a clear conscience. Since someone suspects me, I'm not afraid of explaining." When Qin saw the way Yu Bing looked at her, she took out the various bills she had specifically found in the accounting room and handed them over. After Yu Bing took it, she took the receipt and explained the itinerary and time of her stay in each place. "This is the bus ticket for my work trip with my colleague and the accommodation receipt for the guest house. This is enough to prove my innocence." Everyone knew that unless there was a marriage certificate, the opposite sex had to stay in separate rooms. Moreover, there would be ward rounds at random times during this period. If they were caught, they would be sent to the police station. Therefore, no one dared to commit crimes in the guest house. Moreover, the dates of Yu Bing and her colleagues' accommodation tickets were all the same. This evidence proved that Yu Yin and Madam Sun were spreading rumors and slandering Yu Bing, but this matter could be serious or trivial depending on how they dealt with it. Just as Madam Sun had said, there were many rumors being spread in the village, but no one had reported it to the police. Therefore, this depended on the person who had spread the rumors. Hence, the old policeman asked Yu Bing, "Miss Yu, do you want to negotiate in private or pursue this matter to the end?" Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 375 Investigate until the end. Yu Bing wasn't a good-tempered person. They had already bullied her, so if she didn't fight back, they would push their luck next time. What will happen if I pursue the matter? When Madam Sun and Yu Yin heard this, they looked at the police nervously. After the old policeman thought about their situation, he said, "Those who spread rumors and slander people will be detained for 3 days and fined 5 yuan. When Madam Sun heard this, she immediately cried, "I don't have money. I don't have money." Yu Yan's expression changed drastically. She wasn't worried about the fine, but the detention. Although it wasn't to the extent of leaving a criminal record, there was definitely some sort of record. When the police saw Madam Sun sitting on the ground and throwing a tantrum, they said calmly, "If you don't pay the fine, you'll be detained for 10 days. Madam Sun didn't mind being detained. The most important thing was keeping her money. Yu Yin looked at Yu Bing, who was standing at the side. Thinking of the consequences of detention, she hesitated and walked towards Yu Bing. Then, she forced a smile and said, "Yu Bing, I apologize to you. I promise I won't find trouble with you again. Let's negotiate in private instead of involving the police. I'll give you the 5 yuan directly." Yu Yin thought that she should give in and get over this crisis first before thinking of a way to deal with Yu Bing later. She didn't believe that Yu Bing would be so lucky every time. Yu Bing glanced at Yu Yin. She would rather believe that a sow would climb a tree than believe what Yu Yin had said. Yu Bing sneered. "You should be punished for your mistakes. Haven't you schemed against me enough times? This time, I should teach you a lesson so that you'll learn your lesson in the future." When Yu Yin saw that Yu Bing wouldn't back down at all, her expression darkened and she pursed her lips tightly. "Do you have to be so ruthless to me?" Yu Bing said sarcastically, "You were the one who started it. I was just forced to fight back." Yu Yin was furious, but she knew that Yu Bing wouldn't give in, so she didn't embarrass herself anymore. She glared at Yu Bing hatefully as she pointed at Yu Bing's nose and said sinisterly, "All right. Just you wait. Don't let me find an opportunity. Otherwise, I'll definitely ruin your reputation." Yu Bing rolled her eyes indifferently. In her previous life, she didn't have a good ending even though she didn't provoke Yu Yin. Therefore, so what if she provoked her in this life? When Qin saw this scene, she wanted to end things today, so she proposed a divorce again. Madam Sun immediately stood up and rushed towards Qin. "You can get a divorce, but Xiao Hui will belong to us. You'll give us 5 yuan a month for child support." This was the last-ditch effort she came up with last night. She knew that her son was still infatuated with Qin, but the problem was that if Qin was determined to get a divorce, she could sue for divorce if they didn't agree. Therefore, Madam Sun planned to take advantage of the opportunity to negotiate and get more benefits. With the 5 yuan alimony every month, she could save up for a year or two and go to the deep mountains to find a daughter of a poor family to marry her son to. It didn't matter if she was old or ugly, as long as she could give birth and work. Wen Qing naturally didn't agree with this plan. No. One of you is violent, and the other is immoral. Both of you have been taken to the police station. None of you can give the child a good environment to grow up in. Seeing this, Madam Sun immediately retorted, Sun Hui's surname is also Sun, so he's a child of my family. Moreover, as a pregnant woman, you can't even take care of yourself, so who will help you take care of Xiao Hui? Can you give the child a good environment? Madam Sun only fought for Xiao Hui's custody and ignored the child in Wen Qing's stomach, since she was already certain that the child in Wen Qing's stomach was a girl. Moreover, she had previously asked Wen Qing to abort the child to prevent it from being a burden. However, this little B***TCH didn't listen to her. This was Wen Qing's Achilles heel and her face turned pale. Madam Sun's question was very realistic. After all, there were 2 people in the Sun family who could take care of Xiao Hui, and once the child was born, Wen Qing would have to take care of 2 children. Even if she filed for divorce in court, the child wouldn't be given to her. When Yu Bing saw Wen Qing's expression, she knew that Wen Qing hadn't thought of how to deal with it, so she gave her suggestion. After Wen Qing takes maternity leave, she can place the child in the neighbors' houses to let them help take care of them. Xiao Hui has already started school and can take care of himself. Moreover, most importantly, Wen Qing has a salary every month, so her financial ability is enough to support 2 children. When Wen Qing heard this, she came back to her senses. Yes, be it financially or educationally, I'm better than you guys. I'm not afraid of you guys even if you sue me. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 376 Going to the police station. When Madam Sun realized that she couldn't get any money or grandchild, she refused to accept it. However, because she was going to the detention center for a few days, she thought that she might as well let Wen Qing take care of the child. When she returned, she would go to Wen Qing's house and cause trouble. Madam Sun narrowed her narrow eyes as she said to Wen Qing, since we can't reach an agreement, we won't agree to the divorce. When she saw Madam Sun's shameless look, Wen Qing could only frown helplessly. There was nothing she could do. After the old policeman looked at the time, he said, find time to settle your family matters in private. It's getting late, so the related personnel will return to the police station with me to take a statement. Seeing that she was about to be taken away, Madam Sun hurriedly pulled Sun Gua to the side and instructed him. Then, she boarded the tractor fearlessly. Yu Yan, on the other hand, looked indignant. However, when she saw the villagers' disdainful expressions, her face turned pale. She was so embarrassed that she immediately lowered her head and hurriedly followed Madam Sun into the tractor. Yu Bing and Wen Qing naturally had to go too. After Xiaoxing took 2 bulging brown paper bags from Wu Qing, he strode forward to drive the tractor. Yu Bing stopped Xiaoxing and whispered, don't run. I'll drive myself. Xiaoxing was a little worried, so he placed the paper bag under the car seat and refused. No, I have to follow you. After Xiaoxing finished speaking, without giving Yu Bing a chance to refuse, he took the joystick and started the tractor. Yu Bing blushed when she saw Wen Qing's teasing gaze. Wen Qing went to the back seat tactfully. When the 2 police officers returned to town, they realized that the speed of their return wasn't slow, but the ride was very stable. Compared to the bumpy ride they experienced when they came, it didn't seem like the driver was the same person. Before entering the police station, Xiaoxing stopped the old policeman and took out the snacks that he had specifically asked Wu Qing to buy from the food factory. As he stuffed them into the old policeman's hand, he said with a smile, sorry to trouble you 2 officers to come with me so early in the morning. Please accept the breakfast I prepared. Seeing this, the old policeman waved his hand repeatedly. No need, no need. If people need help, they should call the police. It's our duty to go help. Even if they called the police, when the police came and what they did depended on various factors. The food factory would become larger and larger in the future, so they would eventually be troubled by their competitors. Therefore, it was very important to have a good relationship with the police. Xiaoxing knew that Yu Bing had a good relationship with Director Qian of the police station in the commune because of President Song. However, these low-level police officers were the ones who did the specific work. Although they didn't have high positions, if they didn't do a good job, they could delay a lot of things, and on the surface, one couldn't find fault with them. If they knew about one's relationship with their superior, they wouldn't dare to delay it, but if they were not proactive in small matters, there was really nothing one could do. After all, no matter how good their personal relationship was, it was inconvenient to trouble their superior from time to time. Therefore, although the other party said that Xiaoxing had to give him everything he needed, He stuffed the 2 bags of food into the old policeman's hand. Take it as my compensation. I drove too quickly and made the 2 of you suffer. After Xiaoxing finished speaking, he pointed at 2 bags and leaned closer as he said with a smile, "These bags are already packed for the 2 of you. Bring them back for your family to try the taste of our food factory's products. If you have any objections, you're welcome to raise them at any time. The other bag can be eaten in the office. Your job is harder than ours and you have to work the night shift, so it's the perfect snack to fill your stomach when you're hungry at night." In fact, the package was only to cover the 2 bags of gift boxes when they were brought into the office. After everyone got some, they would naturally be more careful when doing things, and it wouldn't let these 2 police officers, who had obtained gifts, get targeted. Moreover, this food were not considered expensive. It was just a token of appreciation, not money. It could be treated as a gift from the commoners to thank the police for seeking justice for them, so it wasn't considered a bribe. Seeing that Xiaoxing was so sensible, the old policeman didn't refuse anymore and praised him with admiration in his eyes. "Young man, you're quite reliable at such a young age. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much." 377 Deal with these problems. Xiaoxing smiled humbly. "I still need your guidance on many things. In addition, I hope you can help me take care of the 2 troublemakers in the next few days. Otherwise, if they keep going to the factory to cause trouble, it will really affect our production progress." Xiaoxing's request wasn't a difficult request, so the old policeman immediately promised, "Your suggestion is very good. The people inside are criminals to begin with, so law enforcement should stop doing illegal things and make them repent for their mistakes." Xiaoxing smiled even more sincerely when he heard this, and the 2 of them chatted as they entered the police station. In fact, the situation was very clear, so they just needed to go through the standard procedure. Yu Yin was willing to pay a 5 yuan fine, so she only needed to be detained for 3 days. Madam Sun would be detained for 10 days. On the way back to the village, after Yu Bing found out where Xiaoxing had placed the food under the car seat, she praised, "Not bad, little Xiao. I didn't even have time to deal with these problems." When Xiaoxing heard Yu Bing's address, he glared at her. "How rude." When Yu Bing heard this, she pursed her lips and chuckled. From the looks of it, she was indeed younger than Xiaoxing, but according to her actual age, she was older than him, so it wasn't wrong to call him little Xiao. As Yu Bing stared at Xiaoxing's handsome side profile in a daze, Xiaoxing felt a little embarrassed. He reached out and held Yu Bing's chin gently as he turned her face forward. "Watch the road." Yu Bing insisted on teasing Xiaoxing, so she turned to look at him and said, "I'm not driving, so why should I look at the road? Let me ask you a question. You have to tell me the truth." Yu Bing restrained the smile on her face slightly and said seriously, "Just now, Madam Sun said that I go on business trips with my male colleagues often. Do you really not mind?" Xiaoxing didn't expect Yu Bing to ask this question, but he was a little happy, since this meant that Yu Bing was already starting to care about his thoughts. "It's not the first day we've met each other, so I know what kind of person you are. Besides, it's better for them to think this way. This way, no one will compete with me." Yu Bing added, "I might not even be able to cook when I'm busy." Xiaoxing replied indifferently, "I didn't starve to death after so many years without you, so as long as you don't mind my culinary skills, I don't mind being in charge of cooking at home." After Xiaoxing finished speaking, he raised his eyebrows at Yu Bing. "Does my answer earn me any points?" When the serious atmosphere Yu Bing had created was instantly ruined, she couldn't help but smile and say, "In view of your overall performance today, I'll give you an additional 5 points." Xiaoxing immediately beamed when he heard this. He had 15 points now, so he was one step closer to full marks. Because Yu Yin had betrayed her own people and even started rumors, her reputation in the village and among the intellectuals had plummeted. Initially, everyone only thought that she had a hot temper and liked to slack off, but she wasn't a bad person. Now that this incident had happened, they considered her to be immoral as well. Yang Yin had been suffering these past few days. He was also at the scene that day, and when he saw Yu Yin leave with the police, he wished he could burrow into the ground. He had never been so embarrassed in his life. Moreover, his relationship with Yu Yin was considered official. Although no one did anything to him because of Yu Yan's actions, the 2 of them were in a relationship after all. In order to avoid awkwardness, sometimes, everyone avoided talking about Yu Yin in front of him. This made Yang Yin feel that he had been ostracized because of Yu Yin, so he felt resentful towards Yu Yin. Although Yang Yin didn't have a good reputation among intellectuals, people who were not familiar with him had a good impression of him because of his good looks. Now that something had happened to Yu Yin, he had no choice but to start thinking about his reputation. Should this relationship continue? However, Yu Yan's family background made Yang Yin hesitate. After all, the temptation of returning to the city was too great for an intellectual. After Yang Yin hesitated for a few days, Yu Yin left the detention center. In the end, Yan Yan decided to continue maintaining a relationship with Yu Yan for the time being. If Yu Yan's family really had a way to transfer him back to the city, who would know what happened in the countryside? As for the demerit in the file, it would only affect Yu Yan herself. It was fine as long as he wasn't affected. After making up his mind, Yan Yan naturally had to perform well, so he woke up early and went to the commune's police station. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 378 Bad Upbringing. Yu Yan and Madam Sun had been locked in the same room for the past few days. Over the past few days, the two of them had lost weight from hunger. The food in the detention center was provided for free, so it was naturally not that good. For every 3 meals a day, there were 2 mixed grain cornbreads and a small plate of pickled vegetables. This amount of food was enough to keep people full if they didn't exercise. However, because of Shaoxing's special instructions, all the food for the two of them was halved. To Madam Sun, who was from a poor family, this sort of life wasn't much worse than being at home. Moreover, she could lie down until mealtime and eat directly. Therefore, although Madam Sun barely had enough to eat every day, she was still able to adapt. However, to Yu Yan, these days were torture. For as long as she could remember, she had never experienced stomach cramps from hunger. Not only did she often buy meat to nourish herself, but she also had all kinds of snacks in her room. Even if she had to save money to return to her biological parents' house a while ago, she could still eat 1 or 2 snacks every 3 to 5 days to satisfy her cravings. Moreover, Madam Sun felt that Yu Yan had caused her to be sent to the police station, so she scolded Yu Yan every day after eating. She cursed endlessly, making Yu Yan so angry that she fought with her. In the end, their dinner was canceled that day. Their stomachs took turns growling that night. After this time's punishment, the two of them didn't dare to fight anymore and started shouting at each other every day instead. The morning Yu Yan went out, she was in an especially good mood. Madam Sun was naturally unhappy when she saw this, so she started to cause trouble again. Little slut. So what if you went out earlier than me? Your record can't be cleared. When Yu Yan heard this, she felt stifled. Madam Sun had touched a sore spot. Over the past few days, she had been so focused on competing with Madam Sun that she had neglected this important matter. The intellectuals file was in the village committee, and as the captain, Yu Bing had the right to comment on the file record. If it were anyone else, she could have bribed them with money, but Yu Bing. Yu Yan knew that the two of them were already enemies, so it was impossible for Yu Bing to erase her record. Madam Sun was lying on the bed with her legs crossed. When she saw Yu Yan's gloomy expression, she felt satisfied and even felt that the cornbread in her mouth was no longer as stale as before. Yu Yan naturally couldn't stand Madam Sun's smug expression, and she provoked, "Madam Sun, don't be smug. Do you think you can get the money and grandson you want? Wen Qin has Yu Bing's help, so don't even think about it. You've seen Yu Bing's methods before. From our current situation, you can tell how vicious she is. Otherwise, there are many things like this in the village, so if they wanted to arrest people, quite a few families would have been arrested." When Yu Yan saw Madam Sun's disappearing smile, she continued proudly, "Moreover, Yu Bing is the factory director. Compared to ordinary people like us, she's a powerful person in the village." Seeing that Madam Sun pricking up her ears to listen, Yu Yan felt smug. She pretended to lament, "A woman like her needs a strong man to teach her a lesson. Otherwise, how could a woman like her have so much power? Speaking of which, whoever marries her will really gain both money and manpower." When Madam Sun heard Yu Yan's words, she came up with some new ideas. She no longer had the mood to care about Yu Yan's provocation. Instead, she began to scheme in the corner. Seeing this, Yu Yan revealed a meaningful smile. If she suffered, Yu Bing shouldn't think about having it easy either. After Yu Yan completed the procedures and left the police station, she saw that Yan Yan had come to pick her up. She finally felt better. Yan Yan had already adjusted his mentality. When he saw Yu Yan, he hurriedly went forward and said with a pained expression, "You've lost weight. Did you not eat well inside?" When Yu Yan heard Yan Yan's concerned words, she suddenly felt sad and her eyes turned red. Thinking that her adoptive parents would definitely ignore her, and her biological parents were far away and couldn't help her, she felt sad. She couldn't help but cry as she complained to Yan Yan about the grievances she had suffered inside. Yan Yan's patience when listening to her and the fact that he had come to pick her up made Yu Yan's impression of Yan Yan improve greatly. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 379 Big Order. In the blink of an eye, it was August. Yu Bing had released 3 new products in the factory last month. There were 5 spice-flavored peanuts, egg rolls, and finger potatoes. With the novelty of the products and the guarantee of quality control, coupled with the promotion of the office's image shop, the factory's orders rose steadily. Especially after the kickback problem was resolved, the salesperson had a lot of advantages when interacting with the procurement department of the large factory. Yu Bing's solution wasn't complicated. The rebate was for the sake of selling more goods, so Yu Bing set the threshold for the rebate. When the monthly shipment reached more than 10,000 yuan, the salesperson could apply for a 1% rebate to the customer. Customers who spent 50,000 yuan annually could apply for a 0.05% rebate at the end of the year. The salesperson's salary had a 5 yuan base salary as well as a commission. It ensured that the salesperson's salary was much higher than the rebate returned to the customer. It was a policy of using high pay to discourage corruption. However, Yu Bing controlled the expenses of maintaining her customers very strictly. It was mainly because after the country opened up the market economy, many state-owned enterprises went bankrupt due to problems with public funding. Therefore, Yu Bing planned to control the cost of operating expenses right from the beginning. Ring, ring, ring. As Yu Bing looked at the report, she picked up the phone in the office. "Hello, this is Delicious Food Factory." An excited shout came from the phone. "Yu Bing, we signed a big order." Yu Bing recognized Feng Kai's voice and was invigorated by their excitement through the phone. "How big of an order is it to excite you so much?" Feng Kai said in a mirthful voice again, "An order of more than 20,000 yuan. City H's steel factory is rich. This year's National Day coincides with the Mid-Autumn Festival, so it's a double holiday and there are more orders." Yu Bing asked, "What kind of goods have they ordered? What packaging requirements are there?" Feng Kai looked at the order details as he replied, "They ordered egg yolk pastries and requested that they be packaged with bamboo baskets. There are 20 pieces per basket, a total of 3,400 baskets. It's just that they're a little anxious to get the goods. They have to get them before the last day of August. Otherwise, we have to pay triple the compensation." Yu Bing looked at the date. There were still 22 days left. Although there were other orders in the factory, they could produce egg yolk pastries first. However, when she heard the amount of compensation, Yu Bing frowned. "The contract template I said has already mentioned the way to compensate for the breach of contract. Why should I change it? Also, I mentioned that if the delay was caused by an uncontrollable factor, our food factory won't pay for the breach of contract. Did you add it after you changed the terms?" Feng Kai only remembered this when he heard Yu Bing's words, so he stammered, "We didn't add it. We signed it in a hurry at that time, so I forgot. The reason we had to change it was that their quantity was really huge. Moreover, they didn't bargain. They even said that we could complete it on a quantitative basis this time. In the future, they would consider us for holiday orders. This time, because they were in a hurry to get the goods and were worried about delaying things, they used this method to let us produce their order first." Yu Bing was a little angry, but she knew that since the contract had been signed, it was useless to say anything now. She could only repeat sternly, "The contract template can't be changed. If there's a next time, whoever changes it will resign." Feng Kai didn't understand Yu Bing's inflexibility. This was the first time he got such a big customer, and this time's order was big enough, so he even made a trip. When he went to discuss the order, the other party had else something on and was anxious. If he missed a meeting and left a bad impression on the other party, they might not work together next time. It was out of consideration for the factory's interests that he didn't call back to tell Yu Bing about this. However, seeing Yu Bing's unyielding attitude, although Feng Kai was unwilling, he still agreed. After hanging up, Yu Bing felt a little uneasy. Coincidentally, Xiaoxing came to the office, so she told him what had happened. When Xiaoxing saw the changes made by the other party, he also found it a little strange. Very few factories would have such strict requirements for time and compensation. There are about 2 months until National Day, but the other party only gave you guys until the end of August. It's not a shop that's in a hurry to sell Mid-Autumn Festival gifts, so why would they make such a request? Yu Bing's original focus was only on compensation. Now that Xiaoxing mentioned the abnormality of the deadline, she felt even more uneasy. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 380 Uneasy. I wouldn't have noticed if you hadn't mentioned it. I just looked at this month's order schedule. It can be arranged, but their requirements are indeed strange. Xiaoxing thought for a moment, but still couldn't tell what the other party was up to. Hence, he said to Yu Bing, "Since you've signed it, don't worry too much about it. Hurry up and prepare the ingredients. The amount of flour needed for the egg yolk pastry is very large. This order is too sudden, so you have to request ingredients from the flour factory." Yu Bing nodded and suppressed the uneasiness in her heart. She ordered the raw materials first, but soon, their uneasiness proved to be well-founded. After Yu Bing hung up, she looked at Xiaoxing helplessly. Xiaoxing's heart skipped a beat. Then, he bent down and patted the top of Yu Bing's head as he asked gently, "What did the flour factory say?" When Yubing heard Xiaoxing's calm voice, she calmed down. Then, she licked her lips and looked into Xiaoxing's black eyes as she replied, "The flour factory said that they have received a notice from the higher-ups that the flour produced is now under comprehensive control. The flour produced for this month has to be supplied to the army at any time. After this month, if it's confirmed that it's not needed, it can be imported into the market." Such a notice meant that the country was preparing for war. Such an urgent notice meant that it was very difficult for the food factory to obtain flour. Xiaoxing thought of the batch of flour that had just arrived at the warehouse at the end of last month and asked, "The factory ordered flour last month. How much is left?" Yubing had just read yesterday's newspaper, so she immediately blurted out, "There's still 4,680 caddies of flour, but the amount required for this month will take up 3,000 caddies. Completing the steel factory's order will take 6,800 caddies. Putting aside some other consumption requirements, we must prepare at least 5,300 caddies of flour." This amount was usually fine, but now, it wasn't enough. After Yubing thought about how the flour rationing was this month, and the other party had also requested that the goods be delivered this month, she looked up at Xiaoxing and speculated, "I think there must be something fishy about this matter. I don't believe there's such a coincidence." With that, Yubing picked up the phone and called Feng Kai back. After telling him the current situation, Feng Kai broke out in cold sweat. One had to know that 3 times 20,000 yuan was 60,000 yuan. After hearing Yubing ask him to investigate the steelworks, he also realized that he might have really fallen into someone else's trap. Hence, after hanging up, he immediately began to investigate. He also called all the offices and informed everyone that he wouldn't take urgent orders for the time being on the grounds that there were many factory orders. Moreover, he informed them that they couldn't change a single word on the contract template when signing the contract. The two of them continued to think of ways in the office, but they both thought of buying it from the black market. Even if the price was higher, it was better than paying 3 times the compensation. However, with such a large quantity, they still had to ensure that production wouldn't be delayed. This meant that the time left for them was very tight. At this moment, Xiaoxing suddenly thought of the 10,000 egg yolk pastries order he and Yubing had placed last week. "Move my order to next month. Supply the production of the steel factory first." There were a total of 68,000 egg yolk pastries. Although these 10,000 were a drop in the bucket, they still resolved 1/7 of the urgent need. However, Yubing was a little worried. "Then what about the orders on your side?" Xiaoxing smiled and said, "Don't worry, these are just the normal unstable factors of the black market supply, so things have always been quite flexible in this regard. I'll replace it with other products." Yubing was relieved when she heard this. Then, she thought about whether this method could be used for other orders, so she immediately called them to negotiate. The people Yubing communicated with were all old customers who had ordered from her a few times. Because they had a certain level of cooperation and personal relationships, after Yubing mentioned the difficulties, many people were willing to exchange for products that used less flour or postpone it until next month. Yubing used this method to gather another 1,200 pounds of flour. Now that the shortfall of 5,300 pounds had been reduced by 1,200 pounds, they still had to find 3,100 pounds of flour. The supply company required stamps to buy flour, so this method wasn't feasible. Yubing and Xiaoxing decided to gather supplies from the black market, then go to the villages further away to collect them. Going straight to the door to collect goods was opportunistic, so the two of them definitely couldn't collect the goods in any nearby villages, in case they were recognized and reported. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much.